Army Blunders. Pave way for native triumph. Battle of Little Bighorn, 1876. Full story. A horse's corpse lay split open, guts steaming in the Dakota snow. As crows tore at the flesh of fallen soldiers, 1876 had become a graveyard. The U.S. government smirked from afar. Their secret orders clear, provoked the Lakota, then crushed them. But when Custer charged in, something went horribly wrong. What unleashed this carnage? Subscribe to Histories and Native Tales to witness the chaos unfold. Snow whips across the plains. In 1876, stinging the faces of soldiers huddled by campfires that sputter and smoke in the wind. Colonel John Gibbon hunches over a battered journal, his breath clouding as he snarls to a lieutenant. Seen a man hate Indians worse than rattlesnakes, says a good one's only good dead. His pencil scratches the page, the lead grinding against damp paper. That venom isn't just his, it seeps through every crevice of the frontier. In muddy Missouri taverns, men slam fists on tables, spitting curses about red devils. At Fort Abraham Lincoln, privates kick dirt and laugh, betting on how fast the savages will run. The Lakota, the Cheyenne, they're less than human to these eyes, a nuisance to be stomped out. But that contempt dulls their senses, muffles the distant thud of war drums, growing louder each night. The Black Hills loom dark and jagged, pine branches snapping under the weight of snow. Gold veins pulse beneath the frozen ground. Miners found them in August 1874, and the news tears through Washington like a gunshot. Ulysses S. Grant sits in a leather chair, cigar clenched in his teeth, the air thick with ash and sweat. He slams a fist on the table, the thud rattling a whiskey glass. "We're taking it," he growls to his advisors, and not a damn soul hears how. Pens scrape across paper, ink blotting as they sketch the plot. Shred the 1868 treaty. Loose the settlers, and let the Lakota bleed for it. January 3, 1876. Zachariah Chandler, Interior Secretary, scribbles the order in his office. Gas lamps flickering. To the agencies by the 30 honest, he mutters to a clerk, lips curling, or we call it war. Outside, blizzards roar, wind shrieking through the plains, piling snow 6 feet deep. Families can't move in that horses flounder, children freeze. Chandler knows it, shuffles his papers, and waits. Philip Sheridan slouches in a creaky chair at Fort Laramie, boots propped on a crate. The sour stink of damp wool and old tobacco clinging to his faded blue coat. He's torched Georgia farms in 64 acres of flame and screams, and now he'll do worse. Push him hard, he snaps to his officers, voice clipped till they break and crawl. His aide nods, scribbling the order, no patrols to stop the settlers. By February, the hills swarm men in tattered coats, swing axes, steel biting into tree trunks with dull thunks. Picks claw the earth, dirt crumbling, gold dust staining their hands. Women lug buckets, boots sinking in mud. The Lakota perch on ridges, silent, breath frosting in the air, eyes tracking every move. A warrior tightens his grip on a lance, knuckles whitening. Then the lie coils up. E.C. Watkins, a wiry Indian Affairs inspector, sits hunched in a cluttered office. November 1875. His coat's frayed, his fingers black with ink as he scratches out a report. Sitting Bull's bands raiding, killing whites. Chaos, he writes, the pen nib scraping wood. He pauses, smirks to himself. This'll do it, and blots the page. No burned cabins, no scalped bodies, just fiction, slick as oil. The report hits the press, December 3, New York Herald, Blair's hostile Sioux rampage. Farmers in Ohio clutch shotguns. Kids in Boston whisper about bloodthirsty Indians. Historians dig through the archives now, flipping yellowed pages. Where's the proof? A dead cow here, a missing horse there, nothing matches Watkins' tale. He doesn't flinch, just lights a cigar and leans back. Gold's worth more than facts. Grant's machine churns Chandler, Sheridan, Watkins, a trio of gears grinding toward conquest. They figure it's easy, poke the Lakota, watch them snap, then roll in with cavalry sabers flashing. Sheridan boasts over whiskey. They'll scatter by spring. Except the plains tell a different story. Hooves pound the snow, a steady rhythm, 2,000 Lakota, 1,000 Cheyenne, 500 Arapaho. Numbers swelling daily. Campfires dot the horizon, smoke curling into the gray sky. The crackle of burning wood, mixing with low chants. Women stitch hides, men sharpen arrows, steel rasping on stone. The U.S. banks on barbarians, who'll flee at the first cannon blast. Instead, they weld into a wall organized, unflinching. Chandler's deadline dies in the snow. January 31 passes with no surrenders. Sheridan's scouts ride back, faces pale, muttering, "Too many, too damn many." Grant's map sits on his desk, edges curling, stained with tobacco spit. He traces the hills with a finger. Smirking at first, now his jaw tightens. The plan's unraveling. Provocation doesn't break the tribes, it binds them. Racism blinds the army, calling them savages isn't just hate, it's a fatal misstep. They don't see the strategy in those campfires, the patience in those eyes. This isn't a cleanup job anymore. It's a fuse sizzling, spitting sparks. Custer's spurs jingle as he mounts up, oblivious, ready to kick the keg. At Fort Ellis in Montana, John Gibbon stalks the wooden porch, boots pounding the planks until they groan. He's commander here, a lean man with a beard streaked gray, and he's restless scribbling notes for the Army and Navy Journal between drills, quill scratching late into March 1876. He squints at the hills, growling to an aide. This land's theirs. Why are we the ones bleeding for it? He's no soft, touch his hands grip a rifle like iron, but he sees the rot. Settlers carving up sacred ground. Orders from Washington, dripping with hypocrisy. Come May, he's marching east from Montana, 400 men at his back, part of the three-pronged trap closing on the Lakota. His gut twists, but his boots keep moving. Philip Sheridan sits heavy at Army headquarters in Chicago, chair creaking under his bulk. April 1876, he's unshaven, uniform unbuttoned, the air sour with cigar stubs and spilled coffee. His desk's a battlefield maps, pinned with brass tacks, telegrams crumpled in piles. He's the general of the army, 45, and his voice cuts like a blade when he leans forward, barking at his adjutant, "I want Terry moving. Gibbon moving, crush him before summer." He's not plotting, now he's pushing, tracking troop columns, demanding speed. His Civil War playbook burn, starve, destroy guides every order. He smirks, tapping a tack into the Little Bighorn Valley. "They're done," he mutters. He's wrong. George Crook trudges through Wyoming muck. March 17, 1876. His campaign, a wreck. Snow pelts his face, stinging red, as his 800 men stumble after a Cheyenne village on Powder River. Rifles crack, smoke stings the air, but the Cheyenne melt into the hills, his attack's a bust. Horses limp, frostbitten, and wagons sink axle deep in mud. He kicks a crate by a guttering fire, snarling to a scout, "Keep your mouth shut." Terry hears nothing. He doesn't report the loss, leaving Gibbon and Terry blind. That failure ripples 300 Cheyenne survivors ride north, joining Crazy Horse, swelling the ranks at Little Bighorn. Crook's sloppiness doesn't just miss a target, it builds an army. George Armstrong Custer struts across Fort Lincoln's parade ground. May 15, 1876, spurs jangling, blonde hair whipping in the Dakota wind. He's 36, 7th Cavalry's golden boy, and restless, his tents littered with stock certificates, busted railroad bets that drained his pockets. He paces, slapping a telegram against his thigh, grinning at Libby. "One big win, and I'm New York's next king." The election's 6 months off November 8, and he smells a Senate seat. Maybe more. If he can dazzle the papers. He drills his 600 men. Sabers flashing, barking. We'll ride through 'em like paper. Scouts warn of thousands, massing his laugh, cuts them off. Rabid dogs, not warriors, he snaps. His eyes gleam, blind to the odds. Sitting Bull kneels in a dry wash, near the Rosebud, June 5, 1876, dust caking his braids. He's 45, Hunkpapa Lakota, broad-shouldered, scars crisscrossing his arms from the sun dance. A knife flashes 100 cuts, blood trickling down his wrists, pooling in the dirt as two. Oh, oh. Watch, breath held. Drums throb, deep and steady. Hides taut under pounding fists. He sways, vision blurring soldiers falling. Horses screaming, then stands. Voice raw. Wakantanka's handed us our enemies. Cheers erupt, a wall of sound. His camp sprawls 3 miles, along the Little Bighorn, 1,500 tepees. Smoke rising thick. Horses snorting in corrals. He moves through it, slow, deliberate, meeting Cheyenne envoys, sketching battle lines with a stick. We strike as one, he tells a runner, eyes hard. He's no dreamer, he counts warriors, 2,500 strong. Tracks army dust clouds, welds Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho into a single blade. His teepee's a war room, voices low, plans tight. Crazy Horse rides the camp's edge, reins slack. His paint-streaked pony kicking dust. Mid-30s, Oglala, Lakota. He's wiry, hawk-faced, a faded shirt hanging loose over his frame. June 17. He's at Rosebud Creek, 700 warriors at his heels, charging Crook's line. Hooves shake the ground, arrows whistle. His war cry splits the air, Hokahay. Crook's men scatter, rifles dropping in the sage. He wheels his horse, calm, directing riders with a raised hand. Back at camp, he kneels by a fire, splitting a haunch of deer with a boy, muttering, "Take it, Winter's lean." A Cheyenne elder nods later, fierce as a wolf, soft as a brother. His tally's grim, 800 fighters under him, bows strung, lances sharpened. He scouts at dawn, squinting at ridgelines, counting Custer's dust. They come blind, he says to a lieutenant, voice low. He's ready fast, quiet, lethal. These players don't just meet, they slam together. Gibbon's stuck, Sheridan's relentless, Crook's clumsy, Custer's reckless. Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse don't flinch, they carve their stand. The army bets on chaos, on tribes cracking apart. Instead, they face a hammer forged, aimed, swinging. The fuse crackles louder. Dust swirls over the Little Bighorn Valley. In June 1876, kicked up by thousands of hooves, thudding against the dry earth. The U.S. Army hammers out a plan to choke the Lakota and Cheyenne, a 3-pronged clamp meant to crush them flat. General Alfred Terry shoves off from Fort Lincoln on May 17, commanding 600 troops westward across the Dakota Plains. His wagons rumble, axles creaking under stacks of bullets and salt pork, while muddy water sloshes in canteens. He unfolds a map in his tent, lantern flickering, and jabs a finger at the Yellowstone River. Growling to his aide, Gibbon links up here, we box him in. John Gibbon's already on the move, leading 400 men east from Fort Ellis in Montana. Boots scraping through rocky gullies along the Yellowstone's banks. The river rushes loud, drowning out the clatter of bayonets against canteens. George Crook's tasked to push north from Wyoming with 800 soldiers, still reeling from his March stumble. The strategy hinges on all three, slamming together Terry from the east, Gibbon from the west, Crook from the south, forcing the tribes into a corner they can't dodge. The terrain fights back, though, a sprawl of steep bluffs, tangled brush, and rivers carving deep ruts through the plains. It's brutal ground, swallowing sound and sight. Communication collapses fast. Terry's scouts gallop out, leather creaking, but their notes never reach. Gibbon runners vanish in the vastness. swallowed by wind and distance. Gibbon's men slog forward, coats heavy with sweat and dust. No hint of Crook's position. Crook's licking wounds from June 17, when 700 warriors under Crazy Horse smashed his line at Rosebud Creek Rifles, barked. Horses screamed, and his troops staggered back, leaving 10 dead in the dirt. He hunkers by a cold campfire that night, muttering to his adjutant, "Terry doesn't need this, keep it shut." No telegram, no courier, just silence. Terry scratches his beard in frustration, snarling to his staff, "Crook's a ghost, where's his column?" The rift runs deeper than logistics. Terry, a Yale-educated lawyer turned general, despises Crook's frontier swagger. Crook, scarred from Apache wars, sees Terry as a desk-bound stiff. Letters from 75 show it Terry once called Crook reckless. Crook shot back, labeling Terry spineless. Now they won't talk, won't coordinate, leaving 1,800 troops split and groping blind. Crook's Rosebud flop stays buried, so Terry and Gibbon march on, guessing at 800 warriors when the real count's triple that. George Armstrong Custer peels off from Terry's command on June 22, spurs glinting as he mounts his bay stallion. He's hauling 600 of the 7th Cavalry, and the clock's ticking. November 8 election looms. His bank account's a wreck from railroad bets gone sour, and he needs a win to shine. He snips his blonde curls short in his tent, scissors rasping as locks fall to the dirt, then pulls on a white buckskin jacket, fringes swaying as he strides out. It's a costume, bold and brash, screaming for a sketch in Harper's Weekly. Terry rolls up with Gatling guns, crank-driven death, 600 rounds a minute, offering them at the fort's edge. Custer snorts, kicking a crate, and snaps, "Those clunkers? They'll hobble me. I ride light." He's betting on speed, not firepower, obsessed with a quick kill. Scouts ride in that night, faces tight, reporting dust clouds, thousands moving, not hundreds. Custer leans against a post, smirking at Major Reno. They'll bolt when they see us savages, don't stand. His voice drips with disdain, eyes flashing as he slaps his saber's hilt. He drills his men hard. June 23 hooves, pounding the parade ground, yelling, "We'll carve 'em up by noon." His pride's a flood warnings, drown in it. The cracks widen. Terry's staff bicker in his tent. Captain Weir paces, snarling. Gibbon's late, Crook's AWOL. Where's the plan? Terry slams a fist on the table, glass rattling, but he's got no fix. Gibbon's column stalls at the Yellowstone. June 21, waiting for Terry's signal that never comes. His lieutenant grumbles, "We're sitting ducks out here." Crook's 100 miles south, nursing losses. His silence a weight, dragging the whole scheme down. The Army's numbers are off. June 24, the Little Bighorn Valley teams, with 3,500 warriors. Tepees stretching 3 miles, smoke thick as fog. Terry's intel, untainted by Crook's report, pegs it at 1,000. The ground's a trap. Bluffs tower 200 feet. Ravines twist tight. Greasewood snags boots. The tribes know it cold. They dart along ridgelines, vanish into draws. The 7th's ranks are thin. 200 of Custer's men are rookies, farm boys from Ohio and Pennsylvania. Barely 20 fumbling carbines with sweaty palms. A private drops his ramrod in the grass, cursing low, while a sergeant yells him back in line. They've shot targets, not men. The clamp's rusting fast. Terry lags. Gibbon drifts. Crook sulks. Custer races ahead. June 24, splitting off with no tether, his white jacket aflare against the brown hills. The Army's counting on a brittle foe, a swift snap. The valley rumbles. Instead, war cries bounce off rock. Hoofbeats shake the earth. The jaws don't bite, they buckle. Snow lashes the Wyoming plains. December 1875 wind, shrieking through skeletal trees. General Crook's winter campaign launches. 700 troops slog through snowdrifts, breath frosting. aiming to shove the Lakota and Cheyenne onto reservations. Horses slip on ice, tails whipping in the gale, as Crook's men hit a Cheyenne camp on Powder River. March 17, 1876. Flames roar, types collapse in showers of sparks. Women drag kids through the dark, but the Cheyenne don't buckle. They trudge north, moccasins shredding, linking with Crazy Horse by April. His crew jumps 700 warriors now, knives glinting in firelight. Sitting Bull's camp swells too. June rolls in 1,500 lodges, line the Little Bighorn. Hides stretched tight. 3,500 fighters chewing jerky, oiling bows. Crook leans on his saddle after Powder River, spitting into the wind. Cold will finish him. Wrong. His raid backfires. Tribes don't shrink. They stack, a wall the army can't see. Back at Fort Lincoln, May 1876, cigar smoke curls in the officers' mess. The army's fat off old scalps. Sand Creek 64, Washita 68, brass clinking glasses, grinning like they've already won. A major slaps a ledger shut, barking to his lieutenants. Savage's whole damn bunch will roll 'em flat any time. It's gospel here, etched in reports from Sheridan's desk. Tribes can't fight, can't think, can't last. A scout stumbles in, June 18 coat crusted with mud, stammering about camps 3 miles wide. The major snorts, lies they're starving out there, and kicks a chair aside. That swagger skips the hard look. Terry's ammo crates sit half full. Gibbon's horses limp from short feed. They've crushed before, so they skimp now, blind to the war cries sharpening on the wind. Custer's tent flaps at Fort Lincoln. June 12 papers, scattering stock stubs, IOUs. $8,000 in, the whole from railroad flops. Election days, November 8, 5 months off. And he's itching for a podium, New York's elite, cheering his name. He paces, boots scuffing dirt, muttering to Libby. One route, and I'm gold back by October. His voice bounces, hungry, picturing headlines. Custer crushes Sioux. Wins his lifeline cash from investors, votes from patriots. He shoves his men out. June 20, 600 saddles creaking, yelling, "Move, fame's waiting!" Terry's plea link with Gibbon hits him like gnats. He's chasing glory, not orders. His rush is a blade, cutting corners to bleed. His choices rot quick. He'd scoffed at Gatling's days back now. June 25, he doubles down, splitting his 600 into bites. Reno's 140 peel south, Bentine's 120 swing. Southwest, he keeps 210 reins tight, buckskin flashing. Scouting's a shrug. June 24 riders, whisper of thousands. Teepees choking the valley. He squints from a rise. June 25 growling. Rabble, I'll gut him myself, and spurs forward. No map, no pause. His logic's a gamble, strike fast, win big, damn the odds. Greenhorns trail him recruits. 18, 19. Spurs tangling in sage, cursing as bullets slip from shaky hands. He's betting on his name, not their nerve. It piles up ugly. Terry's wagons mire 20 miles east. June 25 axles groaning, no runner from Custer, no hope to close. Gibbon's 400 slog 30 miles west, boots sucking mud, deaf to the split. Crook's 100 miles south, licking rosebud scars, lips sealed. The valley's a beast, bluffs, claw 200 feet high. River bends snap shut, dust stings eyes. Sitting Bull stands by his fire, June 25 arm raised, voice like stone. They're here, coot him down. Crazy Horse vaults up, lance gleaming. 800 riders fanning out, hooves soft on packed earth. Custer's 210, crest the ridge, Reno's bleeding south, Bentine's adrift. The army's smug haste cracks wide, Sitting Bull's mass, Crazy Horse's steel. The ground itself turned Custer's dash to ash. Hooves thud soft on the Dakota grass. June 22, 1876. As the 7th Cavalry rolls out from Fort Lincoln. Elizabeth Libby Custer stands at the gate, wind tugging her dark hair, arms locked around her husband's neck. Tears streak her face, soaking into his buckskin collar as she clings tight, her breath hitching with sobs. George Armstrong Custer pulls back, mounts his bay, and rides off 600 men trailing, dust swirling. Libby stays rooted, a lone figure shrinking against the plains, head bowed, shoulders shaking. John Berkman, Custer's orderly, watches her fade to a speck, muttering to a private. She's crying like he ain't coming back. The sky shifts, clouds twist, catching the column's shadow, a strange mirror overhead. Wives of officers linger near the stockade, hands wringing shawls, eyes darting to the horizon. A lieutenant's bride whispers to another, "Feels wrong, too quiet." Unease ripples through the camp. Though later tales might stretch at hindsight, Die's fear darker. Custer's tent glows faint that night. June 24 lantern light flickering through canvas near the rosebud. He's hunched over a table, quill scratching paper letters. Orders. Notes not the usual poker game with cigar smoke and brash laughs. His face tightens, jaw clenched, as he looks up at Major Marcus Reno pacing the dirt. "Listen if you've got ideas. I'm all ears," he says, voice low, steady, not the cocky bark Reno knows. It's a jolt Custer, the strutting peacock, asking for input. Captain Frederick Benteen leans in later, briefing scouts, and Custer nods, quiet. "Trust your gut out there." Officers swap glances. Lieutenant Godfrey scribbles in his journal. He's off humble, almost spooked. They've seen him scoff at odds, slap backs with a grin. Now he's brooding, eyes flicking to shadows. Some mutter his luck's thinning, 36 years of gambles. Maybe the dice are cold. The night stretches long, June 24 into 25. Custer still at it, ink stains his fingers. Papers pile up, maps creased under his palms. No whiskey shots, no card flips, just the rasp of quill on paper, boots scuffing as he shifts. He's prepping hard, not playing, the weight of tomorrow pressing his shoulders. Dawn cracks, June 25, and he gathers his officers. Reno, Benteen, Captain Weir, voice firm but strange. He's betting on speed, not firepower. Obsessed with a quick kill. It's not his style. Usually he'd strut, bark, lead solo. The seventh's riffs run deep. Reno's sullen. Benteen's bitter from old slights, and Custer knows it. His caution jars, like a man peering over a cliff. Dread hangs thick. Libby's letter arrives that morning. June 25 ink, smudged from her grip. "I miss you. George, stay safe," she pleads. Words trembling on the page. She's 200 miles away, pacing Fort Lincoln, gut churning. Custer tucks it in his coat, mounts up, buckskin catching the sun. The column moves, carbines clank, reins snap. Green recruits stumble in the sage. The valley waits, bluffs looming, river glinting. Warriors watch from high ground, lances steady. 3 days left, and the air feels like a held breath. This tangle of omens and unease knots tied a wife's tears, a commander's doubt, a quiet camp before the storm. Custer's mask slips, just enough to chill the bones. The little Bighorn's jaws are set, and they're closing fast. Subscribe to Histories and Native Tales. Stick around for what hits next.